Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! And Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. It's another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle with you here, as always, on this Tuesday. Just a lonely old Tuesday. Here, as we are in the early stages of May. I don't even have the date. What is today's date? May 9th.
That's right, May 9th. Finally starting to experience some humidity down here in the southern portion of the area.
It's that a lot of moisture in the air. A lot of moisture in the air. Although, it looks, as I look out the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios windows, it does not look nice out there, but the forecast says otherwise, correct?
Yeah, I think it's going to get better throughout the day today.
Some people it won't be getting better throughout the day for. Alabama's baseball coach, Alabama's baseball program, Iowa athletics. I bet you don't know what this is about. Dun-dun-dun. John, that's where you're supposed to hit
did you say Iowa athletics?
Yes.
I do know what this is about. We actually talked about this on a different show I was on yesterday. Another sports betting going on.
You missed the joke, though. You're supposed to hit the rim shot. Bet you don't know what this is about. Man, I this is something that I've wondered about. There's no way. I mean, you worry about that in professional sports, but there's only 30-ish teams in every league. Period. You've got 300 Division I basketball teams. Just Division I. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of games. That's a lot of stuff to track. We'll talk about all that. Talk about that with Mike DeCourcy, who will be along today, chronic Hoosier as well. That and much more. Indiana basketball taking on Harvard up in Indianapolis in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Indiana heading back to Indianapolis to play. The Lakers and LeBron are up 3-1 over Golden State. Former Indiana football player Cody Latimer finds himself on the 2023 All XFL team. So congratulations to him. Bob Huggins.
Oh, boy.
Oops.
Yeah, oops is right.
Now, I've listened. I've heard this. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have any. It's hard. I shouldn't say this because I sure hope I don't find myself in this position one day. But it's kind of hard for me to have sympathy for Bob Huggins in this, unless he was drunk. Seriously. You just can't do that stuff. And you know that. And this was far worse than what, what's Marty Brennaman's son's name?
Either way, the guy who was doing the Cincinnati Reds play-by-play.
It's Brennaman's son.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as soon as that came out of his mouth, it off the air, no less, I believe, or he thought he was off the air. He was, whatever. He immediately knew the mistake he made, starts apologizing immediately. Bob Huggins doubled down. It's going to be interesting. And now, first of all, I'm not looking for Bob Huggins to be fired. I think that is utterly ridiculous. I think obviously all of us can say things that, especially if you're in my generation, I'm going to be honest with you. And I'm not making excuses for bad behavior, but it's a lot easier to get yourself in trouble only because certain things that you may have said in the past were you didn't realize were not in the best of taste. So you have to be super, super, super aware. Someone like Bob Huggins, he has to know. He has to know, man. He's in the spotlight all the time. Would he have said that to an ESPN reporter or a Fox reporter or whomever, a Big Ten, after a game? I don't think so. Because you're pretty aware of your environment when you're on air. Especially if you do it a lot, you're aware of your environment, although sometimes it can get comfortable. But he would not have said that in a post-game interview. Maybe if someone even would have asked the same question. He got way too comfortable for some reason in that radio interview, and as if he was in a box. So we'll talk more about that with Mike DeCourcy as well. But the gambling is the biggest issue, because I promise you, if you think Iowa is alone, no way. There's no way this stuff is not going on out there. And how are you going to catch them? You can't catch them all. What if a player doesn't say Jack, opens up an account under a different name somehow? So they have opened up Pandora's box. That's something we're definitely going to be talking more about. And of all places, Iowa. Is sports gambling even legal in Iowa? That's surprising. I guess it is. It has to be for all those people to be involved, but it's a little surprising. I didn't realize that gambling was legal in Iowa. There's not much that's legal out there, is there?
Yeah, they definitely find themselves on the more conservative side of things, so I am a little surprised. But at this point, we are getting to that point where it's hard to find states that are still.
And it's Iowa and Iowa State. It's both. Don't think that it's just Iowa. So now with sports gambling legal in Indiana, you've got Notre Dame, Purdue, Indiana, Valpo, Butler, IUPUI, Evansville. Trying to think of all the division, USI, all the Division I schools, Indiana State. There's like 10 Division I schools in Indiana alone. 10. And that Indiana, obviously a state where gambling is legal. So that's going to be a very interesting where does this go? And it's the best thing is the best thing is it's caught early now, because if there are, for the others that are out there doing it, maybe this puts a scare into them. But for those of you that don't know, the University of Iowa announced yesterday that 26 athletes across 5 sports are suspected of wagering on sports in violation of NCAA rules. More than 100 people have been linked to this investigation. Iowa State also acknowledged that some 15 of its athletes across 3 sports are suspected of violating gambling rules. This comes it's less than a week after Alabama fired its coach, Brad Bohannon, for those suspicious bets made in Cincinnati that the guy was in direct contact with him. Jeez. Of course, NCAA rules prohibit athletes, coaches, and staff from betting on amateur, collegiate, or professional sports in which the NCAA conducts a championship. So they're able to bet on things that the NCAA does not have a championship in. That pretty much eliminates a lot of sports. Right down to rowing, and I don't think people are betting on rowing. It is illegal in Iowa for anyone under 21 to wager on sports. And for example, athletes cannot bet on NFL games even if state laws would legally allow them if they weren't competing under NCAA rules. The Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission confirmed to the Action Network, a media outlet focused on sports wagering, that it had opened an investigation into Iowa Hawkeyes baseball players suspected in wagering. Back to baseball, man. What is it with baseball? Cheating sons of bucks. I'm just kidding. The Astros, the Black Sox. What is it with baseball? Cheaters. Pete Rose. Cheaters. I always said baseball was America's sport. I think it's the degenerate sport. I'm kidding most of the way there. For those of you that missed it, Bronny James made his decision committing to USC. Doubt he'll be there long enough to play in the Big Ten. But just continue to think about USC, UCLA joining the Big Ten. That's going to be a boon for the Big Ten. Basketball. Football, USC. I mean, it's going to be cool. Thanks a lot for joining us on the Andy Moore Honda Hotline. And, of course, we're brought to you by powered by Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymorehonda.com to get more to your door. And don't forget the family of restaurants of Endeavor Hospitality in and around the Bloomington area. Great places like BB's Market that has the best in custom meats, full-size bakery, most in-house custom-made products around, and soon to come, within a month, starting June 1st, the Butcher's Cut, the new steak restaurant located on south side of Bloomington. Cannot wait to get that going. You can just walk over and pick your own steak if you like from the butcher. Pretty cool stuff. Don't forget on today's program, like DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier. We will be talking about some of these irregularities while we're waiting. I know everyone's wanting baseball or basketball, but that stuff's just you're gonna have to wait. Mackenzie Abaco, everything I keep hearing is he's gonna take his time. When it happens, it happens. I'm not. When it happens, I'll talk about it.
Break.
We've got to take a break. Appreciate everybody already jumping in on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. We'll get to those comments and much more as we continue here on this Tuesday, May 9th. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the market, whoa, 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 whoa.
Couldn't get to my mute button in time. Excuse me.
Let's see. Here's what the top 50 national recruiting rankings look like after Bronny James commitment. Number 1, Kentucky. 2 is Duke. 3, Oregon. 4, UConn. Oregon is always up there and doesn't do jack shit.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
I have noticed that.
I'm glad I can say that in the break. Sometimes you just got to get one of those out.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't do crap. But listen to this. And I can't wait to talk about this. Indiana people, you want to wonder why? Number 1, Kentucky, Duke, Oregon, UConn, Michigan State, Louisville, Kansas, Baylor, Ohio State, Arkansas, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Tennessee, North Carolina, Memphis, Maryland, Georgia, Houston, Gonzaga, and Xavier. Virginia, Oklahoma, Kansas State. There's Indiana, number 26.
Morning, Mike.
Michael, how are you, sir?
Morning, guys.
We are still in the break, just FYI.
I figured that.
I was just wondering if people wonder why Indiana basketball stays where it stays. You keep recruiting behind everybody else.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's kind of going to happen. Man, did you get your bets down, Mike?
My bet's on what?
College World Series.
I know.
That's a joke.
However, my wife called the Kentucky Derby winner as we were preparing to watch the race.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah?
It's just that, we were not in position to put any money down on that. So we won.
Dale Earnhardt Jr., man. I was watching in the pre-race. That was his pick.
10 seconds, guys.
And will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste with Dr. Hobbs' Brewing, Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Tuesday, May 9th. Very, very fortunate to be joined, as always, by the great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. Michael, how are you today, sir?
I am well, Jim. How are you?
I cannot complain. It's kind of relatively calm time right now. So trying to get some rest in. I mean, calm as far as not having to travel. But man, oh man, content is not a problem. Yeah, and I thought about starting out this morning with saying, hey, I bet you don't know who's on today's show. But that was too easy. Man, I don't even know where to start. I know which one is worse, and which one is potentially just game-changing is the gambling scandal. But of course, there's also Bob Huggins is in some deep water, and I said earlier, and I like Bob Huggins, but it's hard for me to have sympathy for him in this instance because, dude, in this, and I get it for people who are older, like myself, like Bob Huggins. You grew up in a different generation, but you've had to learn and change. Man, I worry about what I say a lot, and those words are not even the words I'm worried about saying. That's on a whole nother level up.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I was researching some things last night, as I was getting questions from people on Twitter, I have people like, why is this a problem? And I'm like, how do I explain how it's a problem? And do I really have to explain how it's a problem? And I was looking for the perfect article to explain why it's a problem. And one of the problems with sharing the perfect article is that often the words that are defined as inflammatory slurs, etc., are mentioned within the text of the article, and I'm not sharing that. Again, because you have an awareness as a media person, as a public person, what you can and can't say, even in an academic context, you can't link to. And so I ultimately ended up deciding not to respond other than to say, look, you know the answer to your question. You're just baiting. And so in so many words, I just left those mostly alone. But I did come across an interesting article that as I said, I didn't end up linking, but it was it was written by a scientist. I can't remember exactly, a behavioral scientist. I think he or she referred to themselves as, I can't even remember at this point who the author was. But what was interesting was it went back to George Carlin's The 7 Words You Can't Say on Television, which when I was a kid, I had that album. I was given that album for a birthday present or something like that. And I mean, I knew that routine back, forth, front, and I'm like 13 years old when I get it. So, so I grew up with those words.
And for those of you who don't know, that's been pretty much the standard. It was for a long time until cable TV came along.
And one of the interesting things was that this professor had surveyed the class that they were teaching, and the words that came up as more offensive than those words, with I believe at least one exception, two exceptions, 2 of the 7 words bled into the current youth and what offends them. That the words that you would think, that the words that get people in the most trouble now, the words that are most offensive are words that are slurs, not profanities. So I found that really interesting and kind of illuminating that, look, young people have gotten this now. They understand that profanity is not as damaging as a slur. And so that's, as I mentioned, among those 7 words in the Carlin routine are 2 that would be considered slurs, and the others are profanities. And so those words are still in the most inflammatory group. But words, 4-letter words, we call them, the young people aren't so bothered by that.
And neither am I, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just getting ready to say, you know what? A 4-letter word can be offensive to one person and not to another, and that's not a slur. So that's their to me. I'm like, hey, you know what? That's your problem. And
neither of us is going to say those words on broadcast because we want to keep our jobs. But
exactly.
but they're fairly they're used fairly commonly in casual.
Well, I can tell you, I'm off the air. My language is as sailorish as anybody, but it's not fraught with. It is absolutely, and I'm not saying this to brag or whatever. It is not fraught with slurs. I just don't bring that into my lexicon,
right?
Because I know I just don't want that to ever even be a possibility of coming out of my mouth. And so I don't think that way. I can think it, but think it in a way that's not that same way, I guess you'd say, or whatever the case is.
Like, you don't use those words because you know they hurt people. Like you mentioned, like the slur, the profanity. Now, like, there are certain profanities that, if used a certain way, are meant to offend people. Like, if you are applying them to the person directly, that's meant to offend them. And that's different than just using it to describe, something that you wrote as, using a profanity, or something that you said, or a movie that you saw as a profanity. Those are things that would not be offensive, except maybe to the person who made the movie, I guess. But the reason you don't say those slurs is because they offend people, they hurt people. And I got a lot of questions from people responding to the column that I wrote about, why is this a problem? And they, because you're not offended by it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who've been hurt many times by those words, or who have friends who have been hurt many times by those words, or family members. So I just don't understand where the empathy is from people who were asking about that. In the column I wrote, I did not call for Bob Huggins to be fired. I did say that if it happened, it wouldn't be outrageous, but I didn't call for it to happen. But I did say that a printed apology is not enough. That isn't enough. A printed apology is the least someone can do, because it's a possibility, and I'm not going to claim any knowledge or anything, but it's a possibility he didn't even write it. Like,
and he was told to write it.
Yeah, but exactly. But it's a possibility that he didn't write it. We have no evidence that he did. It was. I would be willing to bet that he's not the one who put it in the font and put it in the nice little blue frame that's on his Twitter. Because the reason I would say that is because I wouldn't know how to do that, and I spend a lot of time on Twitter. So my guess is that Bob would not know how to do that. So I want to hear from him that he is contrite. I want to see that he is contrite in the way that Tom Brenneman, the former Cincinnati Reds play-by-play person, who Hugs knows, who used to call Bearcats games back when I covered the team on the local cable. So Hugs knows him and had him speak to his team in person back in 2020 to discuss accountability for one's actions. So he had him. So this is not. So the fact that the exact same word has put Tom Brenneman's career basically in limbo, and now for 3 years, and it was a very successful career. He was the Cincinnati Reds regular television announcer and calling National League games for Fox, and he has not had either of those jobs since. So this is not, what happened to Tom was not a surprise to Bob. I mean, he's aware of it. He's not, he's just because he's in West Virginia and Tom was in Cincinnati, he knew what had happened. So he knew what the consequences of that particular word could be, and still he dropped it on a radio station with a 50-watt signal.
And not once.
Not once.
He doubled down.
Doubled down.
And I know that it sounded like to me that's a joke in regards to an old rivalry. It's a backhanded joke, probably. I get it. Do I think that he really meant what he was saying? No. I think I know it, but it doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter. And he knows that. So
so I want to see more from Bob relative to what occurred. I want to see him undertake the kind of work that Tom did. Even after Tom lost what he lost, Tom still went through that work. And
Tom started apologizing the moment he said it on the air, knowing how horrible it was, and just he was obviously very contrite instantly. And look what he's gone through.
Yeah, and I'm not, again, I am not taking Tom's side. I'm showing what's possible for Bob, what he should be doing in the future. If he doesn't happened to lose his position, I think that he should begin using his platform to try to do more than simply just put out a decorated apology on social media.
Gambling. I bet you didn't think we'd talk about that today, Mike.
Well, I think that there are.
I mean, this was inevitable.
I think
there's no way this
probably.
It's inevitable.
I have mixed feelings about the continued prohibition for college athletes relative to gambling. I have mixed feelings about it. I haven't done enough research on it, but I do know that like professional athletes are allowed to do it. They're just not allowed to do it on their sport, on their team. So like if you were, say, a student athlete at Iowa State, and let's say you ran track, well then certainly, or you can't bet on track. And I would say that at the very least, you can't bet on Iowa State. But I'm not sure that we need a prohibition against the other stuff. I don't know. I would like to hear the case made by those who keep that rule in place on why that needs to why that needs to continue. I think that, again, I don't know this space well enough to know whether or not it's necessary. I know they're adults. And again, they would have to meet all the other standards of whatever state laws they were following. And I don't know, like, what is it in Iowa? Is it 21? Is it 18? I mean, you would have to meet all those other standards. But if you did, I don't know. I like I said, I'm a bit ambivalent on this, on whether or not that rule for the NCAA in the form that it is needs to be in place, or whether it can be tailored more specifically to one's own circumstance. Certainly not bet on your sport, certainly not bet on your school, because it's basically the same thing. You can get inside information because let's say you're a track athlete and you room with a basketball player. You can get inside information just by rooming with that basketball player if he or she limps to the bathroom. So can't do that. But beyond that, I'm not sure. I don't know whether it needs to be all encompassing. And I believe, as I was reading last night, I believe it still is.
Yeah, I think that you should absolutely not be able to bet on the sport that you play for certain. Even if it's betting on other teams, just because with the transfer and everything, so many people, it's who knows, but
right.
But we've got to take a break. Plenty more to talk about. When we come back, we can talk about the block charge, Mike. Block charge, baby. And much more. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us, back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
What else is new? What's coming up?
Oh yeah. What is coming up? Did you stay up for the Lakers game last night?
Man, I fell asleep.
Oh, that one was good. That game was fantastic.
Fell asleep. Who was the dude that came off the bench?
Yes, Lonnie Walker from Miami. Yes, from the Hurricanes. Lonnie Walker comes out in the fourth quarter and turns the game. He was unbelievable.
LeBron sitting there hugging him, and it was like the big press moment. He was like, "Thank you for saving us." They're up 3-1, man.
It is just amazing how many great players there are out there in the NBA and how they can all have their moment. It really is tremendous how much talent there is in the NBA. When I was watching that game, I get a lot of stuff from people who are college basketball fans only. I get being a college basketball fan first. I much prefer the college game to the NBA in terms of its structure and in terms of its the way the game's played. And I understand that players at the NBA, as I just said, are more talented, but I really enjoy watching the college game more. But I don't understand not enjoying the NBA. I don't have time for the NBA from to watch it on TV from November to April, unless the Pacers are really good and playing a big game. But when the playoffs are on, I don't know why someone who loves sports wouldn't be interested.
Nope, me either. No, yeah, it's great. It's always been. I remember being just out of high school, and it was like the Rockets was playing somebody, and I was like, that was back when the Dream Team was playing.
Yeah.
But it was just like a different sport. The NBA literally became a different sport then when the playoffs, to us for some reason.
Yeah. I will tell you a story. When I was in my early 20s, and I had never seen an NBA game in person. There was no team in Pittsburgh. So I'd never seen an NBA game in person. I got assigned to do a story. I think Norm Nixon was from Pittsburgh. This is when I was working for the Pittsburgh Press. And Norm Nixon went to Duquesne there in Pittsburgh and was playing for the Clippers. He'd won a championship or two with the Lakers and got traded to the Clippers. And so he's playing with them. Walton is playing for the Clippers. The Clippers are, I think, the worst team in the league at that point. And I think the Cavs are second worst. They're certainly both at the bottom.
I'm sure you're pretty accurate. You've got a pretty wide berth on the Clippers being the worst team in the league.
But I go to this game, Jim, and I am blown away by how talented the players are. Couldn't believe it. And they're the worst teams in the league.
Here we go.
No extra charge, so leave the heavy lifting to us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals in your fridge. Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. It is Tuesday, May 9th, and we're so fortunate that this is Tuesday because Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News is with us. Lots of different stuff to talk about, really. We were talking in the break about Mike getting introduced to the NBA. Well, actually, I was talking first that even when I was young, I remember like 1920, we would watch the playoffs because it was a different sport almost when the playoffs came around. It's like, wow, we didn't really have an interest during this regular season. But man, the playoffs were different and fun. And it was a lot of guys that you had just seen in college. So it was just so much more engaging then. But you were telling the story, and I'll let you tell that one. But it's very similar to me when I took my daughter. I did not grow up with soccer. I think I've told you that before. It wasn't in my school. The sport wasn't offered, so didn't like it. It was like, that's a goofy sport. She started playing in the fourth grade. I ended up taking her to like a AAA, what you would call a AAA game, and I was blown away. I mean, she wasn't even paying attention, but I'm like, damn, what the hell? Look at these guys. I mean, they were up and down hard, just running nonstop, getting it. And I'm like, oh my God. I said, I could never do that. I would never want to do that. But that gave me the complete different perspective and respect for that sport, and that and knowing the rules. That helps. But there's so many people don't give things a chance, I think.
Right.
But it's because you've got to see it in real life to understand. TV just does not translate a lot of things. I will say that one of the story I was telling was I was working for the Pittsburgh Press and sent to Cleveland in mid '80s to do a story about Norm Nixon, who had played at Duquesne, was one of their all-time greatest players. And
won a championship or two with the Lakers early 80s and then got traded or went free agent to the Clippers. I can't remember which it was, when they were still in San Diego, by the way. And they played the Cleveland Cavs, and I went up there to do a game. And back then, media were courtside, so like right at the press table. I'm sitting where Jack Nicholson would sit now if he went to Clippers Cavs games. And I had covered a season of college basketball. I'd gone to a bunch of Dapper Dans, so I'd seen great high school players, and I'd seen college basketball up close plenty of times, and I'd never seen an NBA game at all. And I'm sitting right there, and the two worst teams in the league, Clippers and Cavs at that point, are two of the worst. And I was just absolutely blown away by how talented they were, how great they were. And I say all the time, everybody should have that chance to sit up close to an NBA game, somewhere in those low rows, to understand how great they are. It's a completely transformative experience. You can sit up where I often have sat for NBA games, up in the stands, and it's an entertaining game, but you need to be down there to get the feel for how great they are. I really don't think you can. Like I went in the late 80s to do a piece on, or early 90s, to do a piece on Charles Smith. He played at Pitt. He was now playing for the Clippers. Now the Clippers were in LA playing in the sports arena. And I think they played the Lakers one night. And so I could see Magic Johnson and Kareem, and that they're still in the title hunt then, or maybe Kareem was gone. It was like 91, I think it was. So I don't remember if Kareem was still playing. I don't think he was. But I'm up, I'm up in the stands. I took my wife to the game, so we got tickets in the stands, and we're up there, and you can see them, and they're great, but you can't. It doesn't feel the same as when you're down close. But once you've been down close, you know how great they are. Is kind of what I'm saying. So I wish everyone could get that chance or take that chance. Like try to do that one time so you can get a feel for how elevated the talent level is when you're watching NBA guys.
Yeah, just something as simple as baseball. If you don't go to a Major League Baseball game, I promise you cannot really get an understanding of how fast that ball is coming 60 feet, 6 inches away from you. Yes. And I will never forget when I was in Cleveland and I saw the Indians play, except they were the Indians, play the, is that a slur?
It's not the best name, but I think it depends on how one uses it.
Here's how I look at it. It's funny is
what's their name at that point.
Here's how I look at it. It was a wrong name to begin with. They screwed up. They were wrong. So that's a wrong. It doesn't even matter. It's a fake name because they weren't from India. They weren't Indians. they misnamed them. Just kidding. But anyway, they were playing Cleveland, and daggone it, he was like a whippet. Pedro Martinez was pitching. Small. He's not a big guy.
Right.
That dude was throwing that ball like 1,000 miles an hour, popping that mitt, and he just looked like a whippet. And I'm like, I'd seen him play on TV before, but I had no idea that little dude was throwing that kind of power until I saw it, heard it, felt it. It's the same with everything, man. You've got to get a taste of it to really, really get an understanding of it, I think. Virtually.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. People talk about hockey. You go to an NHL game; it's a completely different experience than being watching it on television, and it changes your perspective about the sport. You can see the line changes, how quick they are, how orchestrated they are. It's a pretty impressive difference without a doubt.
No question. Block charge.
Yes.
And agents. We'll talk about the agents on the backside, like CCA and how much they're involved. But this block charge, I know this is the bane of both of us. I hate it. I hate the way it's been called, but I did. I laughed out loud when I saw the proposal of how they're going, that
if the offensive player's foot is down, the defender can't. I'm like, was it not already like that?
No.
Was that not? I know
No.
they haven't been calling it that way, but I thought
No, it was not like
that way.
You had to have launched. They couldn't come under you if you were in the air. At that
that's
point,
the dumbest. That was so stupid.
it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous, for the reason that once a human being initiates the process of jumping,
what are they going to do?
It is essentially impossible to stop the process of jumping
or change your movement or direction.
Yeah, exactly. But the most important thing is that you're probably 99 times out of 100 wanting to go in one direction anyway, because that's where the goal is. So changing the direction, but once you start to jump, it's almost impossible. I'd say it's essentially impossible to stop. And the important thing about that was that as the athlete, as the player was gathering to go ahead and do that, if the player jumped in front while the gather is happening, that player was legal at that point. As long as they were, facing the player straight ahead, in front, not moving forward, they became a legal defender. And so the offensive player had no choice but to commit the foul. It was a terrible standard for charging. And I'm hopeful now that the rule has been rewritten so that once a player plants the foot to jump, that you have to have already been legal. So it pretty much, you have to be there when the athlete might still have a chance to change his mind, that he might still have the opportunity to stop, to jump stop, to pass, to pull up, or whatever it might be. That at that point you still have the opportunity to change your mind. But once you initiate the process of jumping, like Superman can jump without putting some lower leg into it. Iron Man can do that. But you got it. You got to get your hips down and then you go up. That's how you jump. You don't just stand there and go straight up. Even the great Michael Wilson of the mid-90s Memphis Tigers couldn't jump like that. You have to initiate the process and then move forward. So now that you are in the initiation process, now the defender has to be legal. And at that point, perhaps the offensive player has a chance to change his mind. And that's a standard that is, if it's called correctly, can work. I still have my concerns about whether they'll call it correctly after they abandoned the flop rule, essentially part way through conference play. It was all but abandoned. So I have my concerns about whether this will be officiated correctly, but at least we're moving in the right direction. The Rules Committee is saying this is what they want, and how devoted the Rules Committee is to this, how devoted the coordinator of officials is to this. Because remember, the coordinator of officials for the NCAA controls one thing that every official wants, and that's the NCAA tournament and advancement. That's two things: advancement in the NCAA tournament. That's the one thing that the officials coordinator controls. They don't control what happens, who gets hired in the Pac-12 or who gets hired in the Big Ten. Those are all league decisions. But if you want to ref in the NCAA tournament, if you want to ref in the Sweet 16 and Final Four, you have to meet whatever standard the officials coordinator and his team presents. And so it's up to the officials coordinator now to say, this matters to us. You're going to do this or you're not getting in our tournament and you're not moving on.
There's not many rule changes that I jump up and down about. This is one. I'm like, oh my God, finally. And yes, it's going to be partly because the athletes today are faster, stronger. Stuff happens quicker. I'm hoping, one hope is that it creates less play stoppage, but in the beginning, I doubt that there's going to be less. There might be more to try to determine this.
10 years ago, around 10 years ago, it was actually 10 years ago, John Adams, my friend John Adams, was the coordinator official for the NCAA. He lives here in Indy, great guy. And he pushed he and the rules committee pushed for a change to the charge standard then, and they did change it. And there were fewer charges. And I remember specifically being in Chicago, sitting in the end zone with the press section in Chicago at the United Center for the Champions Classic that year. And Perry Ellis, who is always used as the meme of the oldest living college basketball player, drove the basket. He was a terrific player, by the way. Drove the basketball out of what would have been for him the left corner. It was to my right. He drove the basketball out of the left corner, swept across the baseline, and threw down a one-handed jam. And I remember distinctly saying, there's no way that play happens under the old charging rule. They've already started to adjust. I don't think the Champions Classic was then the first game, so they might have had, exhibitions and then one early game and then the Champions Classic. But they've already started to adjust at that point, understanding that if you dive in at the last second, you're going to get called for a block and maybe give up a 3-point play. So if the rule is enforced, and it was pretty well that year, I think it died a little bit the closer we got to March, but it was pretty well enforced. If the rule's enforced, the game is more dynamic. We see dunks like that Perry Ellis dunk happen more often. We see drives to the goal. Drives to the goal are exciting plays. I hear all the time, the player we don't want players driving out of control. What's driving out of control in a basketball game? Like if we see a guy get a handoff at the 10-yard line and he runs toward the goal line, is he out of control? No, he's trying to score. That's what they're doing in basketball. They are trying to get the basketball past the defense and get it to the rim. That's how that is a dynamic play. That's what we want to see in basketball. It's not exciting basketball to see somebody jump in front of somebody when they jump in the air and then fall down and say, oh, wow, that's a charge. That's not exciting. That's not great basketball. Now, if somebody bowls, like sometimes I see in reactions to things I write, like I did with this weekend, ban the charge. I am not saying ban the charge. Because if you ban the charge, what am I doing with the basketball? I'm running through you every time I get it. Well, if there's no charge, why would I not? Why would I not bowl you over? You're on the ground now. Now it's 5 against 4. Of course I would do that. So you can't ban the charge. But you can take it and make it logical and make it more difficult to attain so that someone who is charging actually is charging, actually is using physicality to go through the defender instead of going past. That's the difference. That's what has to change, and that's what if the rules committee if the oversight committee passes it, which they will, and then if it's enforced by the conferences and by the NCAA, we'll see better basketball in 2024 than we did in 23.
Looking forward to that. Now, another part of this is as the recruiting saga continues, how much do the agencies play into this, CAA and those people? Because there's been I've seen some chatter on the Andy Moore Honda hotline, but Indiana, for example, they've got these 2 spots and they're talking to specific people, high profile people that are wanted by other people as well. But it's like there are more things involved now than a lot of people realize in this process. It is not just the schools and the families, and it's not just NIL. There's all kinds of stuff that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say. Remember, it's still not permissible for a prospective student athlete to have an agent. That's not within the rules. It is permissible for any athlete, I guess, to have marketing deals, and it depends on the particular state association. But there is NIL permissible at a lot of the prep schools, at Overtime Elite, so it's allowed there. So that athlete might already have a marketing person in place. But an actual negotiating player agent is not something that prospective student athletes are allowed to have. They can have them. A college student athlete can have an agent during the draft process, and be able to use that person's advice to help navigate the draft process, whether it's workouts, the combine, etc., interviews, etc. So I don't know exactly how much the agencies are involved, but I know that, I mean, for as long as I've been covering this stuff, there has been involvement. Whispers, more like, not necessarily direct involvement, direct negotiations, but you take care of me, I take care of you. You send me the player, I make sure no other agent gets to that player while he or she plays for us. That if you send them here, we'll make sure that you get them back, so to speak. That's something that has happened for decades, and it's just those relationships between the agent and the athlete can develop in the mid to early teens, depending on the level of talent with the athlete. So, I think that I remember when we had the Rice Commission, if I recall correctly, they definitely discussed the possibility of opening more relationships with agents for young athletes. And I can't remember specifically now. It's been 5 years. I can't remember specifically now whether they basically just said open the doors, but I know they wanted to expand that availability, and it has been expanded some, but it may, with where we are now, it may be time to expand it fully, because the reality is it does happen. I mean, if there is another player with LeBron James's talent who develops, who comes along, that person's going to have agencies on their doorstep early. I mean, I called LeBron as the next great player. I mean, like a generational player when I saw him as a rising junior. And Tom Konchowski tipped me off to him. The late, great Tom Konchowski tipped me off to him a year before that. And I just didn't get a chance to see LeBron because of my own circumstance. But so I knew about him when he was going to 10th grade, when he'd finished 9th. I saw Greg Oden when he'd finished 9th grade and was going to 10th, and I knew that he was going to be extraordinary. So, of course, the agents know these things. I mean, they may not be able to put it in the same context as me, maybe not, but they know the guy's a player, and they don't necessarily need to know that LeBron's going to be the next great player or the greatest player in the history of the game or whatever. They just need to know he's going to be a pro. Then they can make money. And so there's definitely contact, and there are definitely relationships. And so I don't know whether it is wise to continue down the road of preventing that.
And I wonder, are there some of these kids that they're almost not even making the decision, them and their parents, that the agencies are just basically making it for them? Hey, here's where you're going. Here's where you
it may be the agency. It may be. I mean, there have been many instances, hundreds, thousands, maybe, of instances where the decision wasn't the players, wasn't the parents, that it belonged to the summer coach or the high school coach. More often the summer coach, but there have been high school coach too, and then two agencies as well. I think that. One of the interesting things I remember when I was covering the Bearcats in 2000, and Gerald Wallace, I think was his name, he went to Alabama, and he was probably the number 2, number 3 player in the class of 2000. And I went to one of his games after the Bearcats played like a noon game at UAB, and then where Wallace was from, which was Childersburg, maybe, if I remember right. It was like about a half hour, 40 minutes from Birmingham. So I drove out there to see him play, because he was also playing against a player that Cincinnati had signed in it, who was from Huntsville or somewhere like that. So it was a great opportunity to see a future Bearcat, a future college star NBA player. And there were more pros scouts and agents in that building that night, because this was before the age limit. There were more pro scouts and agents in that gym than there were fans. That's a fact. There were more and that was 23 years ago now, more than 23 years ago. And that absolutely went on then. So, and then Gerald, I think a lot of people weren't sure whether he was going to do, straight to the pros or go to college. He ended up playing at least a year at Alabama and then went pro after that.
Hey, to Doc Duaney, speaking of a former great player, there's one right there. Grateful to have him jumping on.
Absolutely.
Love to have him on the show sometime. I mean, he is great in a lot of ways. And a Bloomingtonian, no less. What's up next for you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm working on some projects and stuff, but nothing imminent. We've got some really cool stuff we're going to do this summer, and we did a project a year ago called the Mount Rushmore of sports. We did it for every city that had four pro teams. We did last year, so I think there were.
These are all pros only.
Well, you had to, in order to qualify, you had to have all four pro teams in your city a year ago.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that's what we did last summer. This summer, we're going to expand it a little bit more than that. Now, you don't necessarily have to have played for one of those pro teams, but you have to be a legend in your city. So we're going to have fun with that this summer. Pre-World Cup for the women, we're 2 months away from that now. July 20th kicks off, and I'll be working on some of that. So mostly long-term stuff, except when basketball coaches go on the radio and say terrible things that they shouldn't say, and then I'll be ready to take it.
So Indianapolis will be included in this next one, I'm assuming. Or maybe they've only got 2 pro sports.
Only 2. Yeah, you got
yes. So they've only got 2 pro sports. AAA baseball does not count.
Before I go, I see on Twitter that Indianapolis Motor Speedway is keeping in place the blackout for the Indy 500 and putting up a fence around the Peacock stream so that those of us who live in the area will not be able to watch on Peacock again, as we did last year when they weren't able to put the tech in place in time to stop it. So IMS, great organization. It's a great event. It's the best sports event, one of the best sports events in the country every year. And yet they keep doing this to the market that supports them. An extra ticket can't
supported them for over a century, no less.
Yeah, well, they didn't have television over a century.
No, but I'm just saying the people have supported them.
Supported, absolutely.
They've always been there, no matter what. Screw TV. They're there no matter. They don't come because it's or not. People do not go to the Indianapolis 500, whether or not it's on television. That's not why you go to that event. It's like the Derby. The Derby's on every damn year. They don't block it out. They don't care because they know the people are coming.
Yes. Yeah. It's such a disappointment. This community does great things for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I live in Fishers. I don't live in Indianapolis. I don't live in Speedway, but this greater Indianapolis area, the state of Indiana, I don't know how far the blackout goes. I imagine it probably touches down to the southern Indiana where you are. But the state does great things for IMS, and it should repay that. It should repay that outreach, that enthusiasm, and the tickets that are bought for the people who aren't able or aren't in that position. They should do better for the city.
I agree. Mike DeCourcy, make sure you're giving him a follow on the Sporting News and on Twitter as well. Mike, I cannot thank you enough. Appreciate you.
Tim.
You bet. Thank you. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News joining us here on this Tuesday. Could not be happier. We've got lots more coming up.
Brought to you by our friends from Barber Pop Real Estate Services down in Southern Indiana, Louisville. They've served those communities for 3 decades. Remax with Shell Sizemore in the Indianapolis area if you're looking for a home there. Her 2 decades of experience may be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com or Barbara at BarbaraPop.com or Matt at BarbaraPop.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the Doc, if you're still on there, man, I'd love to have you on.
I was at the banquet at the Monroe County Sports Hall of Fame banquet where he was inducted in. That was a couple of years ago. Went in with Rex Grossman. Oh, no. Not many. Think about this. Here's the Monroe County Hall of Fame. Oh, my gosh. Super Bowl quarterback Rex Grossman, Big Ten MVP Jared Jeffries, and NCAA championship game player. The Kensers, legendary midget racers. There's like 3 of them. Big Ten MVP. I already said that. NCAA basketball champion Keith Dewaney, his brother. There's too many state champions to mention. Dodd graduated from Bloomington North in 95 and was the all-time leading scorer at that time. He went to Wisconsin. Led the Big Ten in 3-point shooting. Think Indiana could have used him? Keith is the first county athlete to be on a high school and NCAA champion. He was on the last, that's right. The last class, single class game. Boy, your end is loud.
Talking to me?
Yeah. It's
What do you mean it's loud?
Whenever your mic opens, it's like you're in a industrial room somewhere.
Oh, yeah, you're probably just hearing my computer's kind of being loud right now. That's what it is. I don't know why it's doing that.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
To help you with your selections, Feast also provides a wide variety of cheeses, gourmet sandwiches, entrees, a coffee bar, bread, pastries, all made fresh and mouthwatering. Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios all day long. But it's going to be an apparently pretty May day, as now I see sunshine outside the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios window. So that's a good thing. Just ready to shake off that. It's time to shake it off and get to spring. I think we're there. Temperatures are supposed to rise for the rest of the week, I believe. As I look at my handy dandy, yeah, we're hitting, holy smokes, people, 85 on Thursday. That's going to make you sweat if you're in this area.
Today's high 77 and a big old yellow ball, and there's nothing around it. Tomorrow, 79. Sunny. Wow. Welcome to Southern California, right? Placing bets. That's what changes is that going to lead to, I wonder, in regards to college athletes. I just don't think they need to be betting, personally. If you're a college athlete, I don't think you should be allowed to bet, period. If you're on scholarship, period. That's just, you don't need that. You don't need that possibility of getting in trouble. I think I mentioned this yesterday with the ability to transfer at a whim. People can just be vagabonds. And let's be honest, while the vast majority of all of these athletes are good kids, they come from good families, but like any place in life, no matter where that is, if that's in a classroom, if that's in a workplace, if that's in an office, wherever, if you have a big enough group of people, you're going to have one or two that probably are less morally guided by the rules of society, I guess. And some of it may not even be their fault. It could be people that just had backgrounds, whatever. It doesn't even matter the case. It's there. That possibility is going to be there when you have that many people. I think it should be just not allowed. College athletes have what benefit do they not have right now? They can go wherever they want. They can get paid. They're calling the shots. How about getting one called for them? I do not think that they should be allowed to gamble, period, in that regard. But we'll talk about that more when Chronic joins us, and he'll do so up next. Looking forward to that. Don't forget, we're coming to you right back. Brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar, located at Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington, right next door to Southern Stone. Two incredible restaurants on the Endeavor list. Both incredible places to go have a bite. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good day, sir.
What's going on?
You know it, brother. Just gambling on another day of life.
I'm doing my best at the table.
What's new with you, man?
Not a thing, man. Not a thing. Just getting into that new rhythm here. Ready to change it in a couple of weeks when community school ends, but making use of the patio and the sunshine.
Well, that's a good thing. You're going to have plenty of opportunities for that in the next few days. I don't know. Is he muted or did we lose him?
I guess we'll just find out.
Chronic, I think we lost you, brother.
Yeah, there we go. Well, kind of. Yes, he's checking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We got you.
I don't know what happened there. I didn't do a thing. It just dropped my audio.
That stuff happens.
God does it on this network.
Oh. Yeah, I'm always screwing with stuff. Come on. Oh, damn it. Come on.
All right. I'm back. All right. Hey, I stopped by last week. You weren't.
I
there,
appreciate that, man. I missed you. Was that Wednesday last week you were in?
Yeah, I forget. One of those days.
Yeah, my day off.
Not
I
bad
do appreciate
timing.
you. Hey.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you, sir. Do you see Zach much?
About once a month right now. Generally during the off season, we tend to run into each other. He's all bunkered in now down on the south side. So a random, yeah, they move not too far south, but they're down. You know where the water treatment plant is out on 37?
Oh yeah,
they're just about that far south, maybe a half mile to the east of that.
Gotcha. That's.
But we used to. I used to pass by his house every day, coming and going for picking the kids up when he was down on Winslow, and now we just don't. We don't bump into each other nearly as much as we used to before.
Here we go, guys.
Southern eateries with quality, local, and organic food as their main focus, Southern Stone strives to always provide their guests with an exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is a beautiful Tuesday, and that's not just because Chronic Hoosier's with us, but that helps. Welcome aboard and welcome back. How are you, brother?
Hey, doing my part to help keep the show sexy, man. Anything I can do to help. You know me.
Hey, and you add a lot to that category. And we're needing it. We're lacking. But we have the sunshine, and that's nice. Everybody can get out and enjoy. But it won't be long before a lot of people will be inside basketball gyms all summer as well, or whatever else that they have going, baseball fields, lots of all that good stuff coming up. Good thing we don't have betting on Little League Baseball. Have some 6-year-olds out there cutting run shaving.
It's funny that this is somehow surprising to a lot of folks, or at least it's funny to me. Since
how is this not going to happen? There's no
since
way
humankind started betting on things, they started manipulating the outcomes of those events. That's just the nature of humanity. People are always going to be trying to cheat whenever there's money involved. And now that betting has proliferated across the country, with all the online sites and whatnot, and college has gotten more and more action in that arena. Lo and behold, people are going to try to cheat on college games too if there's some betting involved. And now we're finding out that one of the easiest ways to cheat is to get one of the participants in on the action. And lo and behold, come to find out, when you pour bazillions of dollars into the technology in that area, it makes it even easier to catch the cheaters. So I wouldn't be surprised if we've got a couple waves of these revelations over the next couple of years. I'm guessing this is probably just the onset of the first wave. We saw it was a couple weeks ago in Alabama. Some knucklehead over in Cincinnati was placing some bets, and it was really easily traced to a coach down there at the Crimson Tide. Now, lo and behold, a good percentage of any college athlete in the state of Iowa is not necessarily been playing on the up and up, perhaps. So I would imagine compliance departments across the country are buzzing right now, doing audits, doing re-educational training with everybody. And who knows what the outcomes are going to be of all these various investigations, but it certainly appears that the great college betting scandal is having its day, and like every other sport, people probably soon going to realize it ain't worth it, because no matter how sharp you think you are, chances are you're going to get caught when you try to throw games or manipulate the outcomes in favor of a betting interest. So college, who says it's amateur athletics, man? This is the big leagues. This is how they do it in the pros. So glad to see college having its day in this area, and hopefully it cleans up some stuff and makes it a fair competition for everybody involved.
Yeah, we have to say how quickly, as you pointed out, the Alabama baseball mess was within just like that, boom, 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 within days. Not only was it caught and the whole process figured out with the guy. But the saddest part of all is a coach being involved, and not only just a coach at a giant school like Alabama. They don't need the damn money. The baseball is gigantic in the South. Why him getting involved in that is a little surprising, but money does things to people, I guess. And these were not small bets, and that's different. That you got a coach involved there, that's a sad thing in and of itself. But these players, not that that's not sad. Who doesn't see, like you said, who didn't see that coming? My God, you think you're going to control how many Division I athletes are there? My God, there's 300 Division I basketball teams. So I can't imagine how many different numbers of people you have out there that have to be watched. But that number has just exponentially grown, and it seems like they're still catching them some ways. But what about the ones they're not catching? Maybe. I think we lost Chronic again. We'll wait to get him back. But yeah, that is.
I'm still here. Are you guys hear me?
Okay. Yeah, there you go. I was just the scare of these players getting involved, and even though hopefully this is a way for people to see that this is not a good thing to do, but children are not always the smartest. Kids, youngers.
It's one of those situations where a lot of folks probably rightly express concern as legal gambling really proliferated. And the technologies that make it so incredibly easy now to place a wager on your phone or your computer or whatever. I speak from experience. My family's Irish Cherokee. Addictive personalities are kind of what we do and what we're made out of. And I'm aware of that. I'm the first male in my family never to have to really battle those things or have those consequences, dramatically affect their life. Fortunately, my father was able to course correct and put our family on a different track, but recognizing certain personalities are going to be more inclined to compulsive behaviors, whether it be drinking, various other vices. But as we know, gambling certainly one of those. And it's not real hard for people to get in a situation where things get out of control really quick, and massively out of control. When you start talking about, how easy it is to take all the money you've earned up and put it in an account, and the ball just goes the wrong way, and next thing you know, that money's gone, and you still got bills to pay. So people get put in bad situations, and that tends to lead to more bad choices often. And I think that's likely what you see perhaps in Alabama and in other areas, where people just think it's easy money, kind of like the crypto world. Everybody saw this cash being made by the wheelbarrow load. So everybody wants to jump in on the action. Lo and behold, there's no such thing as a sure thing. So it's real easy. And I've seen it with some of my coworkers, some of my friends, where, what was just a little side habit, now all of a sudden, you're gambling away paychecks or greater, and things can spiral out of control really quickly. So unfortunately, that's the case with some gamblers. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of folks, whether they be players, coaches, whomever, not unlike the rest of us, tend to get caught up in that allure of some easy cash. without necessarily considering all the consequences. So, as we've seen in professional sports, even here recently with the Detroit Lions, from the accounts of what's happened up there, a lot of guys thought they were playing within the rules by placing some bets. Come to find out, that's not the way the league saw those rules, and now the consequences are proven to be pretty steep. All things considered, when you consider how much money those guys make over the course of several games or a season. So, unfortunately, we'll probably see some athletes that have similar lessons. They get passed down from either state regulators, schools, or the NCAA, the conferences, what have you. And, somebody's got to be the test pilot. Somebody's got to be the first case that comes forward to kind of set the precedent that everybody else is going to learn from. So hopefully there's a lot of learning taking place right now and re-education about what is and what isn't permissible. And they figure it out, because it's unfortunate. You hate to see it. But it's just a part of sports around the world. Always has been, probably always will be. But now it's come to visit the college athletics world. And like I said, man, I think we're probably just at the cusp of this wave. I wouldn't be surprised if you see similar issues pop up at schools and conferences all over the country, just because people are people, man. They're going to make mistakes. And in this day and age, it's just incredibly easy to make some bets. And when you're one of the participants, it can be awful tempting to maybe put a couple extra bucks in your pocket and help somebody out. But man, it's just not worth it. It ain't. The smartest bet I ever make's the one I don't place.
You got that right, because you never lose money. Never lose money on that. Yeah, hopefully though we get that straightened out. Indiana still looking to fill a couple of roster spots, and there's a lot of conversation this morning about how that sometimes these agencies like CAA that are brand agencies, not like NBA type agents, and players are allowed to have brand agents of the sort, but that these guys are really starting to control where some of these players end up, and that's making recruiting even more difficult. Not that it hadn't already gotten there because of NIL, because of the transfer portal, et cetera, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, that's, I think, again, this is a different vein, but the same conversation of the maturation of college athletics in the modern era. Folks have always sought representation for issues that are bigger than their experience, their backgrounds, their expertise. And, professional athletes, they've got agents, they've got advisors, hell, they've got stylists anymore to help really perfect their personal brands, if you will. And a big part of this, with more money, being put on the table for these athletic services, a lot of these athletes, whether they be, rising high schoolers, transfers, what have you, these guys are seeking representation. And it's, as we've seen in the past, it was always the shady AAU coaches or the high school coach or the quote unquote camp. This kid's got a bad camp, feeding him with bad advice. This
is fun as always. Here on this Tuesday, May 9th, the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Always fun. There we go. You're back.
I think I figured it out, man. On this app, my phone keeps timing out and it goes to the screensaver. And when it goes to screensaver, it drops audio. Nevertheless, finishing that thought, I think what you're seeing now is that the coaches are finding out that professional agents are a little bit more savvy and a little bit more influential than some of those folks they used to be dealing with in the camps, if you will. And it's just the modern reality. We ask any NBA GM what it's like working with Drew Rosenhaus, for example, or any of the other agents who have notoriously got their clients some pretty hefty contracts. This is probably just the natural evolution of what happens when kids start getting paid. And rightly or wrongly, that's the nature of it. And I would imagine, if you were to take a look back and put this all on a spreadsheet down the road, the kids with proper representation are probably going to end up getting better deals than those that don't. So all power for the kids for finding whatever leverage available to them. But no different than NBA GMs and other administrators, the professional level, colleges are going to have to figure out how to adapt to this new world because it's a money game. It always has been. It's just being done above board now. And as we're seeing, some of the kids are employing some pretty big guns in their corners. So, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but at the end of the day, probably what most of us thought NIL was going to lead to. Those that have the resources are going to be the ones that are able to amass the assets. And, there's certainly other intangible resources beside cash that's going to sway these decisions. But for a lot of these kids, the dollar sign, the bottom line number is the one that matters. It's true in my world. It's true in everybody I know in business. And whether or not you want to still consider amateur athletics, it's proving to be very much true in NCAA athletics right now.
I absolutely agree, man. What's up next for you?
That's a great question, Jim. We are a couple days away, actually 8 days away from my kids being done with school. So we are ready to transition to full on B-Town summer, not just absence of IU student B-Town summer, but we are certainly taking this first week of the first step of the summer to make the most of it. 2 for 2 on patios this week, hoping to keep that string running tonight as well. And then on throughout, because it's always fun to go dine al fresca out and about, but important too for folks that have certain places they love to visit year round. Remember that when the students are gone, most of our businesses lose a sizable portion of their customer base. So don't forget to treat yourself and go support some local businesses this summer. They're going to need us with the students going.
Great call. And as a matter of fact, I've got a new one for you. You know where BB's is, the old wagon wheel. They're next to Starbucks. They're opening up the Butcher's Cut, a new steakhouse on June 1st. So you can walk over there and pick out your own steak or tell them how you want it cut.
I can't wait to check it out. Love me some good beef.
Awesome. It's going to be awesome. Love me some Chronic Hoosier every Tuesday. It's a blast. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Jim. We'll catch you next week.
You betcha. The great Chronic Hoosier joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got lots more coming up, and we're back with it right after this. Brought to you by Andy Moore Honda.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the... I'm having a scone.
Cool. Excuse me.
Only because I went to the store last night and I'm like, I need something for a certain time of the day. They just looked good and I got them. I went solely to get stuff for the new air fryer. I'm not sure how much stuff I actually got for the air fryer. And I got a crap ton of crap.
I'm doing the best I ever did.
What the hell is that?
The song.
Well, no kidding.
I think the song's called Whatever.
Who sings it?
Godsmack. play it if I wasn't worried about copyright. All right, here we go.
Operated by Endeavor Hospitality Group, launched from a previous staple in Bloomington, the former Function Brewing, Metalworks Brewing Company is the culmination of a passion for beer, food, and custom metal art. Check out their custom growlers. Metalworks Brewing Company has an updated menu, new brews, and will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste with Dr. Hops' Brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by K-Bello. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Appreciate you being here on this Tuesday. It is absolutely beautiful out there. It's going to be a Chamber of Commerce day here in the South Central area of Indiana, that is. Sunshine and 70s, baby. Cannot complain about that. All kinds of comments going on in the Andy Moore Honda hotline. You guys have your own conversation. Russell likes the microphone. There you go. Let's see. Speaking of betting, if you're a student at Purdue, you can't bet on Purdue, and they can find out if you do. Really?
So, like, even if you're a non-athlete.
That's what I was getting ready to ask. That's borderline illegal. How do you?
I mean, I guess there's still a very small number of people at the university who are legal enough to do it anyway, right? Don't you have to be 21?
Well, that's not the point. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, if you are a student at Purdue, you cannot bet on Purdue, and they can find out, is that a student athlete or just any student? I don't know how you can do that. That just seems illegal to me.
Yeah, I don't get how you could regulate it in that fashion.
I don't either. I mean, I can if you're an athlete because you're receiving grants and aid and scholarships and whatever else. But everybody else is paying to go there. They're the boss. They're the customer. Customer's always right. Right? That'd be interesting to find out.
That's what they say, right?
That would be interesting to find out.
How can they even monitor that? Are they able to track everything? I mean, I know people can monitor anything, I guess, but
well, all bets can be monitored from any. Well, first of all, how you register, your email, your phone number. You'd probably have now. Obviously, you're not going to use your school email. That would be beyond stupidity, beyond stupid. But a lot of people just have the one cell phone. Most people have one cell phone, like me.
That's true. Yeah.
And so now I do have a second number that I can use. It's a Google number that I use for other things, but it's the same phone. So, yeah, blue chips became real life a long time ago, man. A long time ago. That's what was ironic about that. And yes, college athletes are permitted to sign with agents to represent their NIL rights, not them in regards to their basketball, in regards to playing in an NBA team or anything in that manner, which I would find it hard to believe that some of these places don't have both, and there's some overlap. But yeah, the fact that if these organizations are starting to have that kind of impact, first of all, that answers a lot of questions on how in the hell Louisville is getting visits from people they're getting visits from.
Yeah, it's a little surprising.
But
But
one big thing with Mackenzie Mbako, I don't know if we've mentioned this before. One of Louisville's assistants is a former Duke assistant, which is who Mbako was initially committed to, obviously.
But see, here's the thing. I don't see Louisville winning next year. I mean, when I say winning, they're gonna win more games than they did this year. But then again, who knows? Hell, look at how things change this year. You get the right players.
For Louisville, it's really going to come down to especially if he lands Mbako. I don't know if he's going to or not, but he's had a pretty good off season, if you ask me. If this is where you find out if Kenny Payne's a good coach or not, because you saw what he did with what they had last year. Not that they had world beater talent, but they should have had way more than 4 wins by a long shot. So there's it's going to be interesting to see if Kenny Payne's able to actually show some ability to coach this year. Because if not, and he has all this talent coming in, I mean, he may be a 2-year coach at Louisville. That's my thoughts on that.
I don't know about that, but
you really think that Louisville would put up with another subpar season, especially after going with four in this day and age of college basketball, where you can flip rosters in one season?
There's definitely going to be some vast improvement has to be made, no doubt. But how much blame is on him for last year?
Well, for the situation itself, I mean, they weren't expected to make the tournament or anything, but I mean, you won 4 games with a roster that should have won way more than 4 games. I mean, this isn't we've talked about this before. This isn't what Tom Crean inherited in his first year.
That's true. Same thing. He had less talent.
And he won more than 4 games compared to Kenny Payne. He won 6
probably absolutely played his toughest schedule.
And the ACC was weak last year. Save for Miami being fantastic in March, the ACC was not a good conference.
Oh, no. Indiana filling these 2 spots, though, and having so much, I don't want to say so much trouble, but when you see a lot of other teams getting the guys they need to get, and the 2 specific slots that Indiana has needed to fill for a long time, but specifically since the season ended, and there are 2 more days of portal eligibility to enter. You have 2 days. Your athletes have 2 days left to enter the transfer portal. That window closes on the 11th. So there are still guys in the portal. There are still guys entering the portal. Then there may be a flux, the guys that are in the NBA draft that are in the portal, but have made themselves available to be drafted, but have not signed with an agent. So there's still guys out there. And I don't know that if Indiana not being in the talks, it makes you wonder why they have not just been able to go out and just knock down their guy. I don't even care about CAA or any other agency. What in the flying hell does a place like Louisville or any other place have that that Indiana can't provide them? They've got great NIL. They've got great facilities. They've got a good team ready to go. They play in a great league. They have one of the best fan bases. They're on TV all the time. It sure makes you things that make you go, And that one certainly does. It'll be nice when it's over. so everything can move forward and look at other things and focusing on recruiting. But speaking of recruiting, who is this? CBS? No, this is the USA Today. They updated their recruiting rankings after Bronny James committed to USC. Okay, and that did not move them up nearly as much as you might think. But anyway, number 1, Kentucky. Number 2, Duke. Oregon, which I said this, I think it might have been off air. Oregon is always ranked high in virtually everything except winning. What do they win? And I'm not talking about games. I'm talking about titles. What in the hell does Oregon ever win? Boy, they're always ranked up in everything. Football, basketball, women's basketball. I don't see any hardware heading that way. Anyway, Oregon, number 3. UConn, number 4. Coming right back, building back right back up. Michigan State, Louisville, Kansas, Baylor, Ohio State, Arkansas, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Tennessee, North Carolina, Memphis, Maryland, Georgia, for God's sake. Georgia, the place where Tom Crean used to coach. That Georgia. 18. Houston, Gonzaga. Number 21 is Xavier. Alabama, Virginia, Oklahoma, and Kansas State round out the top 25. You didn't hear me say Indiana, did you? They're at number 26 on this list. But if for fans that want, and that's why, if you wonder why a lot of people do not consider Indiana elite, why a lot of players don't consider, look at that list I just listed. There were 25 teams in front of Indiana, 25 programs, and that included Georgia, for God's sake. In recruiting rankings. That says a lot. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no science to that. But there is sure a connection. There's absolutely a connection. You have got to be elite. You have to recruit elite. You have to have elite to be elite. And that's just a fact. But it's also more of a reason and more of a fact why I'm talking about Indiana has to land these guys. I'm not talking about the specifically named people, whether it's Mackenzie Mbako or Jordan Dingle. It could be 2 other guys that we're not even talking about. But they have to be of that caliber. They have to be of that level. That's what Indiana must do. If you want to be amongst the teams that I just talked about. There's a reason national media does not. They look at Indiana how they look at it. Because they look at the facts. And that's what the facts say. So hopefully that changes because they're that close. I mean, I believe that. That would be they would have a hell of a team. I think that they would be a better team next year than they were last year if they're able to fill these 2 spots with the guys that are productive there for them. Robert Robert says, just wait until the shoe companies start pushing conferences to sign exclusive deals like tire companies and racing. No, don't see that happening. Not a bad thought, Robert. It's just that I don't see that happening because the schools have independence in regards to that. And I don't think that will ever change. That's too big of a deal. We're talking too many millions and millions of dollars there, because you'd have to guarantee that every school is going to get more than they're getting in their current deal. But also there's other things. Like I mentioned before, Indiana's a big fish in a little pond with Adidas. So I don't think that is going to, I don't expect that to change. Not that that was a bad thought. Shoe companies have and always will be involved. Kind of another reason I'm wondering, I'm surprised that Indiana hasn't. Or maybe they have gotten more help from Adidas. Yes, Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino had Adidas deals last year. Were those after the fact? If so, that doesn't help land anybody. But it's going to have to happen relatively soon. I mean, I just don't see this going on for more than another couple of weeks. It actually can't. You need to get guys in here for June. And I know it's May 9th, but these guys are still in school. So there's going to be a lot of change, a lot of things that happen before June 1st. And that's not that far away. We'll be talking 3 weeks. I'm trying to find here we go. The link that was sent in regards to the betting from Purdue University and the vice president for ethics and compliance, frequently asked questions about sports wagering. Now, I'm assuming this is to all. Is this to all students? Why is Purdue University? Oh, here we go. Just answered my own question. Why is Purdue University banning sports wagering when it is otherwise legal in the state of Indiana? Prohibition of wagers on Purdue sports by our faculty, staff, students, and independent contractors is a statement about the culture. Yeah. Our visiting scholars, our clinical interns. Yes. Who is considered a student under this policy are students who take AP or dual enrollment classes subject to this policy. Yes. Are prospective students? No. You could only be forced to stop gambling once you leave high school and enter Purdue. Our students, our online students, Purdue online students, subject to this policy. Yes. So Purdue is going as far as banning gambling by anybody involved with their university, students, faculty. I don't know how that's legal. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just don't see the legalities. A. B. Easy ways around that. Brothers, sisters, friends that aren't going to school. But it's the policy that we're talking about. Purdue alumni are not subject to the policy. Freelance photographer. If you get paid to do freelance work, subject to the ban. Can they participate in March Madness bracket pools? Now, we're out of time, but if you are not required to pay anything to participate in the bracket pool, you can. Cannot participate in the bracket pool if it costs money. That was amazing. That's just a great little bit of information. Lots coming up tomorrow. That was fun today. Fred pointing out Boo Booey going back to Northwestern. So that's going to be some drama there. We'll look forward to seeing that. And plenty of other things. Tomorrow, Wednesday, of course, Rick Bozich with us, Cal Den Rip. We'll see what else we can get scared up for you. Bob will be off tomorrow. And I cannot thank everybody today. Mike DeCourcy, of course, Chronic Hoosier. John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. And most importantly, you guys for keeping us up and going. It was a very active crowd today. Cannot thank you enough. Fun stuff. Go out and have yourselves a great day. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.